Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and I apologize if you hear any background noise. There's a little bit of construction going on my street today, and unfortunately it's kind of unavoidable, so hopefully it doesn't overwhelm anything I have to say today. And what I have to say today is something that you may have probably noticed lots of people are talking about. And it's kind of connected to the Joker film that's coming out. Now, at this point, I haven't seen Joker. I haven't made up my mind whether or not I'm going to. I think it looks okay, I just don't know if it's the kind of movie I want to see in theaters yet. But either way, I don't think it looks bad. But there are lots of people who do think it looks bad, but not in terms of quality. You may have heard that there's been a lot of buzz about whether or not this film is going to incite violence, because it's a story about a man who is beaten down by society until he is eventually provoked into outright villainy, and, well, that's a subject that hits kinda close to home in this day and age, unfortunately enough. You may have heard the mainstream news media blasting stories about how this movie is going to incite incels to gun down theater audiences, and the military is on high alert, keeping an eye out for these horrible people who are going to be driven to violence because of this movie. All of which is, of course, being blown way, way out of proportion, to the point where if something does wind up happening, God forbid, but if it does wind up happening, it will be more likely because the news told the guy who was going to commit violence anyway where he should go this weekend or in any of the following weekends. But even so, it occurs to me this is nothing new. By which I mean this isn't the first time that the news media has tried linking acts of violence in the real world to works of fiction. I mean, granted, this is one of the first times I can think of where people have preemptively made that connection, because at this point, no actual acts of violence have occurred yet, but people are anticipating it because of the subject matter of the film. But even so, it's not the first time this sort of thing has happened. We've seen plenty of times when first-person shooter video games have been blamed for school shootings, or heavy metal music has been blamed for suicide, or, heck, we all know about how Catcher in the Rye was one of the books read by the guy who shot John Lennon. It seems like whenever the news media finds out that a person who committed an act of violence is a fan of a particular kind of media, whether it's specific or general, they always try to play up that connection somehow. And of course, politicians latch onto it and play it up even further. And speaking as someone who is part of the entertainment industry, not like a professional somewhere, but I make videos on YouTube, I've got a published book, I am part of that crowd who might eventually be blamed for that sort of thing. I'm sick of it. I never thought this particular argument made much sense, but quite frankly, it's gone too far. Way, way too far. If we're starting to get to a point where we are anticipating the violence just because of what a movie might be about, then we have clearly crossed the line of sanity. It's an argument that's never made sense, not just because there are actual scientific studies that discount some of these connections people make, but also because it's underhanded. It's trying to shift blame in a way. Naturally, because the Joker is coming out soon, Joaquin Phoenix has been doing a lot of interviews, and in one of those interviews, he was asked, "Aren't you concerned that this movie might incite certain people to violence?" Which Joaquin Phoenix rightly balked at, and then he got up and left the interview because he couldn't really believe that's where this was going. More background noise, I'm sorry about that, but I'm gonna keep going. He couldn't believe where this was going, and quite frankly, there was this undercurrent to the question, like, if something does happen, you're partly responsible, because if you hadn't made this movie, then this hypothetical person we're talking about in the future wouldn't have committed the violent act we're all so certain is gonna happen. And it makes no sense. You know that old argument, guns don't kill people, people kill people? Well, that goes doubly for entertainment. Entertainment doesn't kill people. I mean, unless you're a stuntman who went through an especially horrible stunt that went terribly wrong, movies don't kill people. Watching a movie doesn't kill people. Reading a book doesn't kill people. It doesn't work that way. I've said in the past, on a completely different subject, mind you, that you cannot pick your audience. You have no control as the creator of the entertainment piece who gets drawn to your work. You just don't. You put it out there, whoever likes it, likes it. Maybe you don't necessarily agree with those people, but does it matter? There are plenty of rock stars who are politically left with an audience that's largely politically right. Obviously, they're not going to get along, but as long as the audience gets the music and the rock star gets to play that music to an audience, does it matter? Of course it doesn't. But that's a bit tangential to the point. The actual point is, sometimes there are people out there who are kind of disturbed. And if they happen to like the work that you put out, and that somehow sets off something in their minds that incites them to do something unthinkable, otherwise unthinkable at least, that's on them. They were already unstable. If somebody is not mentally right, then you have no idea what's going to eventually set them off. It could be anything. If it turns out to be a piece of entertainment, that's a coincidence. Because people all over the world probably experience the exact same piece of entertainment and never do anything to that level of violence or that level of tragedy. I mean, you look at the Columbine shootings. They said that the Columbine shooters played first-person shooter video games. Oh my gosh! A teenaged high school student played video games. Stop the freaking presses! No one in the world does that other than violent people. Obviously, it's a ridiculous claim to make. The Columbine shooters, they already had problems. It is a tragedy that they did not get help with those problems before they went over the edge. But even if we entertain the notion that they viewed video games as a way of training to shoot up the school, that's only how they interpreted it. Other kids who played that game probably just played the game and didn't think about it. Or Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger has sparked certain people over the years since its publication to commit acts of violence as well. But Catcher in the Rye is required reading in a lot of American schools. And the number of kids who read Catcher in the Rye, or heck, the number of people overall of all ages who read Catcher in the Rye, compared to the number of people who commit violence after reading it, there is no comparison there. The people who commit that violence are such a small fraction that to say Catcher in the Rye is directly responsible for it is a ludicrous claim to make. I keep repeating myself, I realize that, but it is. You know what, just to keep from repeating myself, let's step away from entertainment for a moment. Let's go to something a little different so I can really demonstrate to you that a person who is unstable can be set off by literally anything and it's unpredictable. Do you all know the Son of Sam? He was one of the more infamous serial killers from the 20th century. He committed his killings in the late 70s. Unlike the Zodiac Killer, he was caught, and he's since been rehabilitated. But there was a brief period where he went out and he was killing people. And the police were trying to catch him. When they finally caught him, it was clear he was mentally unstable. But you know what set him off? Well, it was hearing his neighbor's dog bark. It's a little more complicated than that, but he heard his neighbor's dog barking, and he interpreted that as commands from the devil to go out and commit murder. Now you tell me, how could anyone have predicted that would happen? And when this was learned, do you know where the blame fell? On the Son of Sam. It didn't fall on his neighbors. No one said, oh, those neighbors of his were so irresponsible for not keeping their dog under control. Didn't they know that they could have potentially been moving next door to a psychopath? Nor was the dog somehow implicated as an accomplice because it was on his commands that the son of Sam went out and killed people. No, it was understood that what the son of Sam did was entirely of his own making. It was his decision, it was how he responded to the stimuli around him, and it's because he was unstable. If it wasn't his neighbor's dog that set him off, stands to reason something would have eventually. We'll never know for certain, of course, but it stands to reason something would have. So if no blame can be placed on the neighbors or the dog for the murders committed by the son of Sam, how then can we place any blame on an author or a video game director or a film director? How can we do that? How can we say they shoulder any responsibility for the violence committed by lunatics? You would think that most rational people wouldn't buy into this, but it seems that quite a few do. And there are two reasons for that. First, because it's easy. It gives you a scapegoat. You can say, these people corrupted our innocent youth, and it's not because the innocent youth was already corrupted. No, we have to maintain that they are the innocent youth. No, it's those bad people over there who didn't realize that their work might lead someone to do something despicable. I mean, heck, if every entertainer had to take that into account, there'd be far less entertainment out there in the world, and what there would be probably wouldn't be that good. But also, it's a power play. A lot of the people who push this narrative are politicians. Politicians who want to give themselves a villain so they can be the hero. Ah, it's those people over there. They are the ones who hold some of the blame for all of this. But if you put me in a position of power, I will see that those people pay for the crimes of someone they had no connection to. That's the problem. Look, if you are a content creator of any kind, any media, and it comes out at some point that your work was admired by someone who went and committed violence of some sort, you should express sympathy for the victims and their families. You should say that it was never your intent for that sort of thing to happen. If you want, you can even donate to some sort of related charity to give yourself a better image. But do not ever let anyone gaslight you into thinking that it's somehow your fault. If someone ever tries to claim that you bear some of the responsibility for some maniac's actions that you've never met, take a page from Joaquin Phoenix's book, get up, and leave. That's my take. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.